Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Yang. This is a group segment by YuQi and me. Now, I will begin by introducing the macroeconomic situation for USA to everyone. Okay, firstly, we can see this graph between 2010 and 2019. The United States experienced a relatively stable economic growth, with both GDP growth rate and the per capita GDP growth rate showing steady increases, marking the recovery and the expansion phase following the 2008 Great Recession. The inflation rate remained at a low level, with the Federal Reserve's target inflation rate around 2%, indicating that monetary policy was robust, signifying economic stability. The unemployment rate was declining year by year, a result of economic recovery and job reaction. They must demonstrate continuous improvement in the labor market. Now analysis this data in relationship to Fisher's equation. We can observe that the USA GDP growth rate exhibits some fluctuation but maintained an overall growth trend. The economic reaches relative highs in 2015 and 2018, while there were declines in the growth rate in 2013 and 2016. The inflation rate was relatively stable throughout this period, with a significant fluctuation occurring in 2011. Low and stable inflation usually reflects on the monetary policy and good economic management. The inflation rate in 2015 was exponentially low, which may have been due to global oil price decrease and a slowdown in domestic demand. In the following years, the inflation rate gradually increases, likely due to economic growth and adjustment in monetary policy. Okay, regarding the factors and the policies driving these indicators, on the one hand, monetary policy, including the low interest rate and the quantitative easing policy set at the beginning of the century by the Federal Reserve, was crucial for stimulating economic growth and controlling inflation. On the other hand, the globalization and the technology advance led to change in the labor market and productivity. For example, technology process increased productivity, impacting GDP growth and indirectly affecting employment and inflation rates. Okay, now my teammate YuQi will take over the second half of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for Alan. Now I'm going to talk about the benchmarking. There's three reasons for this topic. Because first one, the economic scale and influence. The Chinese and the United States are two world's largest economic, and the comparison the two countries can help us understand their relative performance and influence in this global economic. The second, in China and the United States are different stage of the development. Through the comparison, we can explore the development paths and the growth driver of different economics. On another way, the limited part, the two different countries' demography and the values may affect economic behavioral and the performance. Their factors are often difficult to quantitate in direct comparison of the economic indicators. Now is the macroeconomic performance on this both country. In the GDP growth rates, we can draw a conclusion for the graph. China's reply GDP growth rate in reply due to the development stage, lower standing point, and economic transformation. And on another side, the United States macroeconomic has been growth become more stable and gradual. In the inflation rate, the annual inflation rate in the United States remained relative standard due to this period around 1% to 2%. The Chinese inflation rate reflected generally due to this period, but was generally controlled by between the 1% to 4%. The stability of the U.S. inflation rates reflect the monetary policy and the financial system. On the other side, China may face to more marketing adjustment and the policy changes. Last one, the unemployment rate. The significant decline in the U.S. employment rate reflect the economic recovery in improving labor market. The China lower employment rate may be related to the characteristic for the labor market and policy support. After benchmarking, the United States clearly more attractive to the investor. First of all, through the US GDP growth rate may be the lowest for the Asian market countries, but the United States still provide a sustainable growth environment, special technology and services. Secondly, the huge domestic demand market and higher consumer power. The last point is the United States has mature legal system and a relatively stable political environment. For the reflection, we don't use any AI because the AI always lack accuracy of the database lookup, even if it can save our time to collecting data. However, the metro AI can plus training can obtain the data, economic structure and analysis very short time. Thank you for listening to our presentation.